Evaluating exponential expressions, first you need to know what the word evaluate means. It means to plug in and then solve or simplify, depending on if you have an equation or an expression. Some of these end up being equations that you're plugging into, and some of them are expressions that you're plugging into. Expressions don't have an equal sign, equations do. The next thing you want to do is plug in any given values, they will give them to you, into the equation or expression, and then simplify or find the solution. Things that you need to know. On the calculator, the button E raised to the X is a new button that you guys are not familiar with. E is a value, kind of like pi equals 3.14159, so on and so forth. E represents a value as well, and it's 2.71828182.8, and it continues. So E is just representing a value. So if you want to use the e to the x button, you have to hit second, and then the natural log button, which is ln, right here next to the 4. The other button that you need to know about is the ln button. ln means natural log, an operation that we haven't talked about yet. And it's written on your papers in cursive with a lowercase l and then an n. You can write it with a ln, but it means the natural log. Why is the L in front of the N when for the abbreviation? I don't know. But ln is the natural log, which is also next to the 4. And then the last button that you need to know is the log button. Which is next to the 7. The log is another operation in the calculator that we're going to talk about in the next lesson. But I wanted to point it out now since I'm showing you the buttons in the calculator. So e to the x is the second button, and then you want to hit ln, which is next to the 4. And then if you need the natural log, it's right next to the 4, so you don't have to do anything. The only thing when you're typing in e to the x or the natural log, you need to be careful about parentheses. Sorry that got squeezed in there. You have to be careful about the parentheses, because if you don't close the parenthesis at the right spot, then your answer will be wrong. So we're going to do 2 examples together. And then I want you to do 2 on your own. So I want to evaluate, means find the answer after I plug stuff in. E raised to the x natural log of y. When x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 6. So e raised to the x equals 4. and then the natural log of y, which is 6. So all I have to do is type that in my calculator, so I'll show you what it looks like in the calculator. And if this was a show your work problem, you need to write it out. You plugging in the values. If you don't show this step of plugging in the 4 and the 6, the two values that you're given, then you won't get full credit. So I typed in my calculator, E, and then the caret will automatically show up if you're using the E to the X button, and the parenthesis will show up as well. So I have 4 times the natural log of 6, and again I use the natural log button. If I'm taking the natural log of 6, I want to make sure I'm only taking the natural log of 6, and I close that parenthesis after I type in the 6. And I want to raise all of this as an exponent, so I want to make sure I have my parenthesis group around my whole entire exponent. So when I type it in, I get 1,296. And that's all the work you need to show, plugging in the values they give you and then your answer. So for the next one, it says using the equation A equals P times E raised to the RT. So they give you the equation. A is the amount of money in the account. P is the initial investment. R is the interest rate. And T is time in years. You have to read the question carefully because it says in years. So after 48 months and $400 is invested with 5% interest rate, how much will there be? So after 48 months is important. 4 years or 400 is invested in 5% interest rate. They want to know how much there will be. So A is what I'm trying to find. I don't know what A is. P is my initial amount, so I'm investing $400. My rate is 5%. But we don't have a percent button in our calculator, so we need to change it. And remember, it goes back 2 spaces to change to a percentage, so I'd have to have 0.5. And then my time is equal to 48 months. But in the equation, T is time in years, so we need to change 48 months to years. So 48 divided by 12 will give me 4 years. So all I need to do is plug it into my equation, which I need to show. So A equals P times E raised to the R times T. So R and T are my exponent. So I need to plug it in. So A is going to equal 400 times E, and then raised to the RT, so my rate is 0.05 times my time is 4. So when you're typing that in the calculator, you need to be careful about the parentheses, because R and T are both my exponents, so I need to make sure that both of those are raised in my exponent. So I'll show it to you in the calculator. So in my calculator, we're talking about money, so I know my answer is going to be $488.56. If you're talking about money, you should know that you're rounding to the hundreds place, because you have that for the money value. You always go to 2 decimals. And then when you're typing it in, so I have 4 times E. If you wanted to put a times symbol in between the 400 and the E, not the 4, sorry. 400 times E you can, you don't have to, because it's treated like a pi, so you don't always have to put in pi times, because remember E represents a value. So 400 times E raised to, remember that little caret means raised to, meaning your exponent. And then I'm multiplying 0.05, which is my rate, and then 4, which is my time, all in my parentheses. I have one parenthesis with a time symbol between them. Don't try to get crazy with the parentheses and put parentheses with parentheses. You want to make sure that whole entire exponent is raised to, or is the exponent. So e raised to that whole entire exponent is what you would have. So you want to make sure your parenthesis goes around the entire exponent. And then you should get 488.56. So I want you to do 2 on your own, and then bring the notes to class tomorrow. So the 2 I want you to do, this one's a little bit different. I have e raised to the 3x, so that's one term, plus the natural log of y, so it's a separate term. So 3x is my only exponent, and you're going to plug in x equals 2 and y equals 8, and make sure you're showing your work and rounding correctly. The next one would be a equals p times e raised to the rt, where a is the amount of money in the account, p is the initial investment, r is the interest rate, t is time, and then they give you the values that you need to plug into the equation. This one says after 5 years, so you don't have to change any months to years. You just need to plug in 5 for t. And then bring these 2 examples to class tomorrow, and I'll check them.